What's up guys, my name's Allie and this is Treat Your Shelf, and today we are going to be doing my May wrap up. I'm so excited about this because I read 14 books this month, which I thought was very impressive. And just going through stats, I read 9 female authors, 5 male authors, 3 historical fiction, 1 horror, 4 thrillers, 2 romance/fiction, 1 Christian living, and 3 nonfiction/memoirs. So I really had a very diverse genre list this month. And then for stars, I had 4 5-stars, 8 4-stars, 1 3-star, and 1 2-star. So I had a really good month. Most of my books were 5 stars and 4 stars. 4 stars, there was a lot because there was just like one thing in the book that I was kind of like, oh, I don't really like this, and this isn't 5-star material, but they were all super amazing. I only had 2 that was kind of like, eh. So let's just jump into the books. So the first book that I read was an ebook, and it is called The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. And it is a historical fiction novel, and I gave this 5 stars because there was literally nothing that I didn't love about this book. It was so good. It was about the First World War, which I always read books about the Second World War just because, I don't know, I'm like more educated in that war, I guess, and it was just very enlightening to read one about the First World War. And it follows 2 different women who are kind of like spiritual animals to each other. They're very like kindred spirits, and one in particular is named Eve, and she was actually a spy in the First World War in France, and I actually talked about that in my former video. If you like this book, then you will like this book, so definitely check that one out because I go into further detail about that one. And then the second book, I actually did my first audiobook that I've ever listened to in my life, because usually I'm not an audiobook person, but it was A Good Marriage by Stephen King, and I couldn't find the ebook or the regular book anywhere. So I decided to take a limb on the audiobook, and this was a horror, obviously, because Stephen King just does that. And I actually gave this one 2 stars because I really did not like it. It kind of was like the trope of the wife never knowing that her husband was a serial killer, stuff like that. It just very, I don't know if it was because it was an audiobook or if it was just not my thing, but I definitely did not love this book. It's just basically about a husband who is secretly murdering women and like a couple of guys, and keeping their licenses in his shed. And so while he's away on this trip, she actually finds them, and she's like, surely that's not what's happening. And I think the one thing that really annoyed me about this book was because she was so naive to literally everything. And like, I understand you've been with this guy for like 25 years, been married to him, he seems like the perfect man, but like, there's evidence right in front of you that he killed these people, and she was just really in denial up until the very end. And then the end kind of was like a very weird ending of like, oh, there's no consequences basically about something that happened, which I'm not going to go in detail because I don't want to spoil this for you, but this was definitely just not a book for me. The third book that I read was called Betrayal, and this is by the Boston Globe staff actually. It is about the very popular story, nonfiction obviously, of these priests up in like New England area, especially Massachusetts where this takes place, that were actually molesting little boys, and it was just a huge scandal and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed the Spotlight movie. I actually had to watch this for one of my classes in college a couple years ago, and I really fell in love with the movie. It's about investigative journalism, and just really cool how they really like revealed the injustices that were being done in the church. And so yeah, I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I think that if I would have gone back, I would have probably given it 3 stars because there's just like a lot of information and statistics and stuff like that, which I think is interesting to a point, but sometimes it was like can you just put a story in there a little bit? So this is a great read, and I think that it really deals with a lot of injustices that are going on in the church, and it really just reveals a lot of statistics and stuff that we would never know without reading this book. So it was good in my opinion, but I gave it 4 stars just because, I don't know, it wasn't a 5-star read for me. And then my next book was The Last Miss Parrish by Liv Constantine, and this was a thriller, and I gave it 4 stars. It was so good though. Like, I was like completely baffled at the plot twist right in the middle. I was just like, what is happening? This is crazy, but it's also great. I think it ended very well, but the only reason that I didn't give it a 5-star is because I hated the character of Amber. Like, I just hated her from the very beginning. And I know that readers are kind of like supposed to hate her because the basis of the story is that she's a homewrecker and she is just trying to get money and marry this husband, even though he obviously has a wife. And she actually befriends the wife and like gets really close to her and like very personal with her, literally just to spite her and be a homewrecker. And I hate that. Like, I really don't like that. And I think, you know, Liv Constantine is writing about this because she wants everyone to hate the character of Amber, but I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, she shouldn't even have these many pages like for her and her point of view. So that's the only reason why I didn't give it a 5-star, but it was so good. Like, so good. Such a good thriller and something that I really enjoyed. And I read that as an ebook as well. The next book that I read was Dry by Augustin Burroughs, and this was 1,000 times better than Running with Scissors, which was his last book that I read last month. And it was basically kind of took off where Running with Scissors ended, and so it is basically about him in college and like after college and him getting a job in marketing and how he's really struggling with alcoholism and drugs and like different things like that, and just the typical like trying to get out of that but also being in denial that he's even an alcoholic. So this was 1,000 times better. I gave this a 4 stars. It was a memoir, obviously, about his life, and I really enjoyed it. I think that it really, like, saved him from the first book that he published because I did not enjoy that one at all. It was very kind of vulgar, but not as vulgar as Running with Scissors. It was a good read, and I would definitely recommend this for anybody who wants to read about kind of, like, triggering things, like addiction and, like, just the struggle with alcoholism in general. He goes to rehab during this, so it is pretty interesting, like his path, but if you aren't into reading about that, I wouldn't read this, but if you are, I would definitely recommend it. And then the next one I read, which was an ebook, was called Writers and Lovers by Lily King, and I loved this book. I literally gave this 5-star. No hesitation in my opinion. She is such a great writer. It's basically about this woman, and she is an aspiring writer in the book, which is super cool. I love when writers literally write about writers. It's a great time. And so basically her life is just like going downhill very quickly. Her mother died, and she hates her job at this restaurant, and she really doesn't know what her purpose in life is, and her relationships aren't going well and all this other stuff. But it really just makes you think about how not everything is terrible in your life, and she kind of just really dives deep into the good of her life, and she is just so passionate about writing this novel, and it finally, you know, turns out to be a success, and it's just a great read all around to follow her on her journey, and it's written so beautifully, which makes this a total 5-star in my opinion. Like, if this wasn't written as beautifully, I don't think I would have liked the plot as well, but I really loved it because of the writing, and it was so beautifully written, and Lily King is like one of my favorites right now just because I had never read any of her literature and it was so good. So I would definitely recommend that. That's probably one of my favorite reads of this month. And then the next book that I read was Overcome by Clayton King, which is super awesome because he's actually my pastor. I go to New Spring Church in South Carolina, and so he is one of my pastors, and it's just really cool to like read a book of someone that you know, because you can just literally hear their voice when they're writing and speaking through their novels. So this is a Christian living book. I gave this one 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. He talks about different lies that we face and the lies that we need to overcome. So it really put stuff into perspective, and a lot of the lies like I definitely struggle with, and I think that everybody struggles with. So it was a really good devotional book if you need one of those, and so I would definitely recommend this book because it was really good. And then the next one was Beautiful Boy by David Sheff, which I talked about in my If You Like This Book, Then You'll Like This Book video, and I just love this. The movie is literally amazing. It makes me cry every single time, and it is about this dad who is really struggling with the reality that his son is addicted to meth, and he just really goes to great lengths to show how he loves his son so much and would do anything to save him from this addiction that he's found himself in. So it's basically his journey. It includes statistics and different emotional aspects of what it really is like to be a family member of someone who is addicted to drugs, and I just really related to this a lot. I think it's very relatable to anyone who has had addiction in their family, and I would definitely recommend this. It was 5 stars in my opinion. And then the next one was called Euphoria by Lily King again, and Writers and Lovers just struck me so well that I definitely wanted to check out her first bestseller that kind of just made her famous. So I gave this 4 stars because I didn't enjoy it as much as Writers and Lovers, but it was very well told. It is about 3 anthropologists who are in tribes, like just immersing themselves in tribes, and there's kind of like a love triangle going on with them, and it just really shows so much about like a tribe of people that you would never even think of. Crazy stuff that like they have customs that we would never even think of that people have, and it just really opened my eyes to people across the world who are very untouched by American people or anybody of civilization. So I thought that it was very interesting. It was obviously very well written because Lily King is just a beautiful writer, and I didn't enjoy it as much as Writers and Lovers because the plot just in Writers and Lovers really appealed to me more, but it was a great read, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who like is interested in culture and new cultures and customs that other people have, and if you want to learn about that, it's a great read. My next one was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and I also talked about this in one of my last videos. It is about the Second World War and about a girl named Isabel and her sister, and it kind of just follows both of their stories and how they have different roles in the war, but they still have very crucial roles. Isabel works helping downed airmen to get across the border safely, and then the sister is a teacher, and she also helps orphans who are Jews who have lost their parents in the Holocaust. So it's very emotional, gripping tale in Paris about just everything that happened, and it just really put a new perspective and light about the females of the war and their role in society during it. And then I just knew that I had to include a Ruth Ware novel in this month because I literally love her so much. This is The Lion Game, and I gave this one 4 stars. It's a thriller, but it was a little bit predictable at the end, so I think that's why I didn't give it a 5 star, because I definitely liked The Death of Miss Westaway more, and I think that some of her other novels would probably appeal to me more, but it's very good. It's about these friends who come back after like 15 years of not seeing each other, and when they were in school, they actually all got expelled for this death that happened of the art teacher, which it was actually one of the girls' fathers, and they played this lying game where they would lie to people in charge and mean girls and different stuff like that. So they definitely have a bad reputation when they come back into town, but a body has just been discovered in the river, so that is why they all come back to town for mysterious reasons, and there's really good plot twists in this. This is just the typical Ruth Ware plot twist that happened in this book, and I just really enjoyed it. It was a 4-star read for me, and I just love Ruth Ware and her writing. She also like describes fish and chips so well in this book that I literally needed french fries like after I was done with this, which is super weird aspect, but like, if you read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then the next book was a little bit outside my comfort zone. It was called The Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Jaswal. It was really good though. I gave this 4 stars. I didn't love it, but it was just very funny. It's literally about these Punjabi widows, obviously, who have lost their husbands and who really like have no aspirations in life in the eyes of the culture, and they start a writing class, like a writing literacy class, but end up literally just telling erotic stories in the class, and there's just a lot of like different stuff that happens. They're super hilarious and like really not what you would think widows would be like, especially like the older ones who are like telling these erotic stories. And then there's also kind of like a thriller component to this book. It's also kind of expected and like your just typical thriller trope kind of thing, which I'm not really going to go into detail because I want you guys to definitely check this book out. But it was really good. There was just a little bit of twists and turns and different things, and it kind of appealed to me because I really liked the component of how these societies, like there's so much more going on than what they really let on to other people or outsiders, and I really enjoyed it and enjoyed the kind of like feminist aspect of it as well. The next book was Bonfire by Kristen Ritter, and Kristen Ritter is actually a very famous actress, and this is her first novel, and I was just so intrigued by an actress writing a novel, and I was like, oh, I wonder what this is going to be about. It was a thriller. I think I gave it 3 stars because it was a little bit predictable, but it was basically about this girl who comes back into town after moving away, and there is like a problem with the water that she's investigating. She's an environmental lawyer, and she really uncovers like all of the town's secrets, and it's super crazy. It has a lot of twists and turns, but the only thing that really struck me as like annoying and very unrealistic in this book is that she just has these like thoughts come into her mind where she figures out all of the town's secrets before anybody tells her, and I'm just like, how could you possibly do that? Like, nobody would know any of that stuff, and it's just kind of, you have to read it to understand what I'm saying, but it was just very predictable and kind of weird how she like had these like premonitions of what would happen in the town, or what had happened in the town, that literally no one else would have known, and she didn't really find it out by any outside sources. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, but it was a really good thriller, and it's a very good first book by Kristen Ritter. And the very last book that I read was called Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I gave this 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star in my opinion, but it was so good. It's literally about this girl named Ellie who goes missing just randomly, and her tutor is very weird, so you kind of suspect if it was the tutor or not that took her. And then we kind of go into the future about like 10 years later, where her mom is just grieving really badly for her because her remains have been found, and then her mom goes on this like romantic journey with a man, and the man's daughter looks exactly like her daughter would, but like in a child form. So it's just a crazy plot twist, crazy tale of just stuff. And Lisa Jewell, I feel like Lisa Jewell is going to be one of my favorite thriller authors because she really knows how to like spin a tale and totally keep you guessing. But it was a little bit predictable at the end because I had kind of just like already known what was going to happen. And there was also a suicide that happens that I really didn't agree with. Like, I think that it could have totally been left out and been fine. So there was a couple nitpick things, but overall this was a great thriller, and I would definitely recommend it for anybody who wants a crazy tale that you read through very fast. I think I read this in like 2 days, so it's really good. But that is all my May reads for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this video. In June, I have a lot coming. I am in a book club, and I'm doing Bookopoly, which is like Monopoly but with books, so super cool. And then I'm doing Romanceathon later in June and an ebook readathon in June. So there is going to be a lot of books coming at you all at once probably for my June wrap up. And then I will also probably do like a Romanceathon video and a Bookopoly video if you guys want to see that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next one. Bye!